Welcome to the Insomnia Project, the holiday episodes. We're on December 28th. We're almost done, 31 days of December. Thank you for listening to the Insomnia Project. For anyone who's joining us, who hasn't heard us before, these are our holiday episodes, so they tend to be a bit peppier and aren't quite designed for you to drift off, though some of you have. Thank you for falling asleep during this podcast. Other people just find it a lovely little holiday accompaniment and they're enjoying it. Thank you for all the messages everyone has sent me and Amanda and Amy through the holidays and how much they're enjoying these particular episodes. I have a great deal of pleasure and happiness to say that I'm going to be recording here in Florida with my father-in-law, a fan favorite, Dan Barker. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, thank you.
And I'm going to try not to edit this episode, so you may hear my mother-in-law coming in the background. I think she knows we're recording, but if you hear it, that's just the way it is. So it is December 28th. How were your holidays so far, Dan?
Well, so far they've been excellent. We're sequestered down here in Florida, and the weather is definitely cooperating.
It certainly is beautiful weather. The Christmas tree is still up. But I wanted to talk to you about the exciting topic of your retirement.
Oh.
How's that going?
It's going, I think it's going quite well. It's when one retires, I mean, you're changing your lifestyle and many other things, and hopefully, when you do retire, you think about the future and what you want to do, what you'd still like to accomplish in life. So I'm at that phase, but we have crossed a few things off our bucket list.
I love it because it reminds me of I want to make a resolution for New Year's. New Year's is fast approaching and the goals that I want to set. So tell me, what are some of those goals that you have accomplished in your retirement? That's the slide door that's opening, and that's Amanda who's opening the door and coming in and out of the lanai. But what are some of the goals that you have accomplished?
Well, the one thing when we retired that we wanted to do and want to do through life is to travel, to see the world. Enjoy some of the other aspects of different cultures. And I think we've accomplished just about everything we've wanted to do there. We found that cruising was a way to go for several reasons.
You mean cruise ships, right?
Cruise ships,
okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And also we've also cruised on the rivers of Europe, etc. So, and those are much smaller boats. And we've checked off the countries we wanted to visit and get to know a little better, go back, as an example, with our heritage, my wife and I, it's England and the UK in general and Ireland.
Right.
And we've had some very interesting times there.
I know you have a particularly interesting story about Scotland.
Ah, yes. Yes. What we were doing, we were on a cruise, actually around the British Isles. That's how we first went to the British Isles. And although I did quite a bit of traveling in my work, seldom was my wife in a position because of her work to join me. So one of the first cruises we did was a cruise around the UK.
I see.
And we started off in London. I guess I should point out the week before that we were in Ireland. But we started off around London and went west around the UK. And halfway through, and we were having a good time, halfway through I developed a terrible toothache. And with that, realized that I had lost a filling.
chomping too strongly on British candies?
I think when in Scotland it wasn't the candy. They have dishes such as haggis and whatever, and that'll kind of turn your mouth into something. Let me tell you. But no.
Any haggis lovers out there, you can send your letters to Dan Barker.
That's right.
Okay.
So at any rate, we were definitely living, let's say, high off the hog, as we say here. But at any rate, by the time we get to the very top of Scotland, there is a group of islands. In that group of islands, you can still find the buildings that date back to the Vikings and the early Scots, etc. But at any rate, I had to go to the ship's doctor and say, I'm in pain, and it looks like I've lost a filling. I most probably chipped a tooth. And they said, well, we won't be able to help you out or find a dentist for you for a couple of days because it's such a rural area. At any rate, the story goes, the dentist they used was all booked up. He says, I can't possibly see him. Well, I'm sorry, but my schedule just doesn't permit me to do that. And therefore, and I grant the cruise ship had to work hard at this, they found a dentist. It was a new dentist, and his practice was different than most. As you know, they have social health insurance.
Yes.
And even in the dentistry, it all goes through, shall we say, the government, who sets the rates, etc. Well, being that I wasn't a citizen of the UK, they chauffeured me over to this dentist that was on the far end of an island, and he would take private patients. So at any rate...
I guess when you're on the far end of the island, you got to take whatever patient you can get.
Yeah, I'm just happy he wasn't a veterinarian.
Okay.
So the long and short of it is, I get in the dentist chair. 5 minutes later, I'm done.
Oh.
I mean, it was just quick, very quick.
They don't mess around in Scotland with teeth.
They do not, apparently.
Don't bang the table, because when you bang the table, okay.
Okay, I won't bang the table. So he gets done with me in about 5 minutes, and then he looks at me and he says, well, sir, I'm sorry, but I have to charge you for this.
Oh, of course, because you're not privy to the UK socialized, dentistry.
So I said, well, of course, that's not a problem. What do I owe you? And he came back and said, well, it'd be about £5. And I just laughed. Because what was that? That was like less than $10.
Right.
So I said, that's just not a problem. So I go out and see his secretary, and I pay her, and they give me a very nice receipt. And as I remember, they also gave me a little bag, a little toothpaste, and some things to help keep my teeth, clean.
Sure.
And a little cement, and just in case the new filling fell out again, at least until I got home. So I just couldn't get over it. I thought it was tremendous. And now, and the cruise ship chauffeured me, which was roughly 50 minutes to an hour to get there.
Right.
So this young man realized, he said, well, you're not able to see any of this area, are you? Because you had to go to the dentist. I said, well, that's right. Didn't have that. I was signed up for a tour, but no. He said, oh, well, we'll take the long way back.
Okay.
So he was showing me...
Wait, the dentist was driving you back?
No, the chauffeur,
The chauffeur, okay.
From the cruise ship line. Very nice young man. and as my wife said, a very handsome young man.
Okay.
So at any rate, he took us around, because my wife did come with. He took us around, showed us what the old time villages looked like,
Sure.
and some of there's a special building that they have over there that they use for multi-purposes, but one is as a barn.
Oh, I see.
And it's made of stone, but it has a dome top. It's circular
Oh, yes.
and has a dome top.
It almost looks like a fairy tale type design, would you say?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And very intriguing, because as he was saying, he said, well, as an example, this one was built, 1,200 years ago, or, whatever.
Right.
Because they do have little placards
Sure.
on some of the stuff. So I found it very interesting. I knew nothing about Scotland, and certainly the islands. Never heard of the islands to begin with, and they all do have names. But the local industry is primarily farming and fishing, and there are ferries that go to and around that area. So we had a very delightful day, one of the best that I can remember.
That's so interesting that you had a tooth issue when you were traveling, because your daughter Amanda, when we were in Florence, had a tooth issue. And I'll get her to tell us about that on tomorrow's episode. But since I have you here today, so that was your trip around the UK and Scotland.
Yes.
You currently live in Florida, which you affectionately call God's waiting room.
Yes. Well, let's put it in perspective. We have all age groups in Florida, and I'm sure if anybody is familiar with sports, they certainly know of universities
Sure.
and teams such as the Miami Hurricanes and the Gators out of University of Florida. However, we have quite an elderly or older community, those of us which have retired and certainly got tired of the cold weather.
Our listeners can probably hear some hips cracking as we speak.
That's right. And, I belong to that elderly group now, and we get around. It's very interesting, because down here you'll see all types of things. One thing that stands out are these old muscle cars from the 60s.
Right.
You can see that, especially with the gentlemen, they're fulfilling some of their wishes they had in life. They wanted that GTO or Super Sport or Jaguar or whatever.
Sure.
So that's one thing you see quite a bit of. The other thing you see a lot of is you'll see some of the veterans, and they all have the same type of ball cap.
That's the sliding door, in case anyone was wondering what that sound is. It's okay.
And so we wear our hats. I was in the Army during the Vietnam era, and we have a joke, and we look at one another. Nobody ever thanked us back then for serving, but down here they're very gracious, and people will stop to shake your hand and say thank you for your service.
Right.
And it's actually quite rewarding after all these years.
Well, it's interesting you should mention the muscle cars that a lot of old timers here drive, because on the opposite end of that spectrum is the golf carts. I see a lot of the elderly people here driving, and that's someone's phone going off. So, in case you're hearing those tings.
Yes. In many communities, the main mode of travel is the golf cart. Of course, these are private communities, gated communities,
Sure.
Golf courses, of course, but more so you see them just for traveling, to go to the store or or go out just cruising so that they can, have a nice time visiting their neighbors, etc.
Sure. So you mentioned that you've had the opportunity to travel a lot as one of your goals in your retirement, and we've mentioned different vehicles. What's the strangest vehicle that you've been on, whether that be a boat, a car, a bicycle, on one of your tours?
Oh, well. Yes, I mean, whether you're on a cruise ship or you're visiting a country, certain countries, bicycles are, as an example, a primary
Sure.
mode of transportation. And going to the Netherlands and the rural areas of Belgium, I can't say that I see a tremendous amount of bicycles in Brussels or any of the large cities, but certainly around the countryside. And those bicycles are a little different than what we have in North America.
Sure.
And everybody has one. I had a good friend that I met up with in the Netherlands who lives there. And he said, no, we all have bicycles. This is how we go to work and sometimes to run errands, etc. And I looked at the bike and I said, oh, that's very interesting. I don't see that it has more than one speed, though.
Right.
And he said, no, then most of them don't. And then he got a bike for me, and we went out and did a little traveling around the village he was in. And they have all these, I think they're very nice, very beautiful bike paths in which that's all you see are bikes.
Right.
All right. And it's nice to see here in North America that more and more communities are setting these up. Over there, my impression was what a great way to see the country.
Sure.
I was in, and I should say we were in some farmland areas of Germany. And there are bike paths that go through people's fields, into the woods,
right,
from one village or town to the next. And I'm not going to say they're overly crowded, but they certainly have their people. I mean, the
Sure.
number of people are using it.
I had the opportunity to ride bicycles, or I was a bicycle tour guide in Europe. And the one thing that always struck me was how the people who are driving cars work with cyclists, and they really respect cyclists. And though I find Europeans might drive fast, they're good drivers, and they respect and allow bikes to do what they need to do on the road. So it's a really lovely relationship between the two. And I have noticed that here in North America, more and more bike lanes are coming, and they're really exercising that sort of fact of let's provide space for cyclists to get around, because it is such a great way to travel.
Well, a good example is my son has used his bicycle to go back and forth to work, and he lives outside the city.
Right.
And what they've done is they've ripped up an old railway area, made sure it was graded over, and even put some hardtop on the top.
Right.
And they're not bothered by cars or other things. They have a free, as he said, I can get into the city and to work faster on the bicycle than I can using a car.
That's wonderful. That would be the goal for a lot of places, I think. So you mentioned goals that you have achieved or executed in your retirement. What are some goals that you have now that you're retired, that you're looking forward to?
Yes, that's an excellent question. It's an ongoing scenario. Certain things I wanted to do or have that I'll give you an example
Sure.
of what I'm talking about. When I first got out of the service, I was just 21 and always wanted to have a boat. I lived very close to the ocean, and
You made boats at one point, right?
pardon me?
Didn't you make boats, or didn't you work for?
That's right. I worked for a company called Boston Whaler,
Right.
and we certainly made boats. Back in the day I worked there were only three sizes: 13-footer, 16-footer, and then we introduced a 21-footer.
Or large, medium, and small, as I
Yeah,
like to call
pretty
them.
much, yeah. And what was nice about the company is that they were always working on development of new models,
Right.
et cetera. At any rate, I was able to buy a boat when I worked for them, and had a great time with it. I did get out of boating because of a couple of reasons, but one is my family was growing.
Right.
And not only did I lack the time that I needed to go boating, but of course your priorities change,
Sure.
and you'd rather make sure your children have the proper clothes, etc., than you having a good time on a Sunday afternoon.
Right.
So at any rate, I thought I'd be getting a boat in retirement, but now that I'm retired, I find it's a lot easier to rent them when you want to go out
Okay.
and use a boat. So that's something that was something always we had talked about having. And no, we don't. We've lacked that interest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into cars, so I don't have a muscle car.
Sure.
And some of the hobbies I had in my younger day have no interest in pursuing now. So things change,
Sure.
and that's I like to think of it as flexibility.
You know, it's interesting because now that we're in kind of these days between Christmas for many and just before New Year's Eve and the new year, a lot of people have these days off. And one of the things I've always appreciated when I come down here is we'll often take a boat out and go on the river. Or remember we took that boat one time and it took us all around an area here in Florida where we got to see a bunch of gators and birds and whatnot. And that was a lot of fun. But even the drives that we do sometimes in your car, just the other day we took Highway 1, is it? What do you call that? And it's right by the water. And we took it for about an hour, and we just saw all these beautiful homes and just the water and different, what do you call them? Docks.
The docks going out, yeah, absolutely.
And it's just such a pretty thing to do, to really take a ride wherever you live during this time where you don't have anywhere you need to get to or go to, and just look around and see what's going on and try to look at it through the eyes of someone who's not racing to work or trying to get to an appointment, but rather look at the beauty that's in your area.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So here's my last question to you. For our listeners, anyone who's going to be retiring soon or is looking forward to their retirement, do you have any tips or sage advice to those who are going to retire? Obviously, set some goals you want to accomplish. Ease into your retirement. Try not to break a hip. What are some things you might recommend?
You want to enjoy, and sometimes that means you want to be flexible in what you end up doing. And what I mean by that is that, I no longer have desires to own a lot of things that I thought I might.
Sure.
But I want to ensure that, we live a comfortable lifestyle. And in order to do that, we do plan ahead as to what is the best time of year, et cetera, to be traveling.
Sure.
One of the great things about flexibility is we can travel when others aren't taking their vacation.
Right, and you can take advantage of last-minute deals or savings because you have no one to answer to but yourselves.
That's very true.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for being a constant guest here on the Insomnia Project and willing to just sit down and record an episode for the holiday episodes. Thank you so much. And all the insight that you provide to our listeners, I can understand why you're one of the fan favorites.
Well, I often wondered when I was running a company why some of the employees would fall asleep when I talked. Now I know. I found my calling.
You did. It's an asset. Certainly a plus for us. Thank you so much, Dan Barker, and to all our listeners who've been listening over these past 28 days. Thank you. We've got a few more days to come before the end of our holiday episodes, and then you'll hear back from us with Season 6 in February. We'll have more details of that to come. Until then, we hope you were able to sit back, listen, enjoy, and who knows, maybe even sleep.